So, let's continue on. The Age of Fire. With the dragon's defeat, and with Gwyn holding on to his powerful soul, being the most powerful lord who cared to do so, he established cities for the Age of Fire. This is an important part of time in the Dark Souls universe because we don't get to see it. At least the beginning. And we don't know how long it lasted, but enough to build great cities, which is not something that happens quickly and easily. And so, over time, Gwyn establishes Anor Londo. One of the things that should shock us about Anor Londo when we first run into it and first see glimpses of it is it's empty. And it's huge. And even though when we get to see it, it's an illusion, it's a large city. And a large city is typically inhabited, which means by the time we encounter it, we don't even get to see the Age of Fire. We see a different age of fading flame. So he establishes Anor Londo. It's full of people. It's full of giant warriors. It's full of gods. Gods like Gwyn himself. His son Gwendolyn, we meet, who was raised as a daughter, is a very interesting character that we won't follow too much into. We only mention him because he comes up later as an important event. We also know of Guinevere, who was known as a goddess of fertility. And then, even though people do not realize who she is until Dark Souls 3, we learn about Filianor, who is in Dark Souls 1. And we will talk about that shortly. Gwyn establishes Anor Londo. But you have to remember, Gwyn is not the gods are not the only people. If you look at Anor Londo, there are large steps and small steps. It caters to multiple types of people. The things we learn about this time period. The descendants of the Pygmies, man, establish other places, have relationships with Anor Londo and the gods. We learn about cities and townships nearby. We learn about the desire of mankind to ascend to Anor Londo. You have tournaments taking place that allow citizens, regular men who seem so weak because the small portion of the Dark Soul they've been allotted. We see them desiring to enter Anor Londo. This is a golden age and a golden era. Civilization is thriving. But we have to remember the nature of the souls is contrasting. And so, as we look at Anor Londo, a city of light, and we look at the gods who are beings who are empowered with the soul of light, we have to remember that there is a secret tension going on. The opposite of light is dark. And the men who seem so weak have the ability to gain great power. And we see that manifesting initially in the city of Oolacile. Whether it's the first city of power that man has or not, it doesn't matter. When we see, as a player character later on, Oolacile, we see it in runes, but we catch glimpses of a civilization that was strong and powerful, who understood sorceries. Unique sorceries, which means they were innovative and were capable of discovery. And so, with that in mind, Gwyn looks at mankind and sees what is actually there. Strength. Strength and something contrary to himself. Because light and dark cannot coexist. And so, you have to remember that man is the descendant of pygmies. And as we learn later, the original pygmy lords are powerful. They were involved in the war. They gave their knights, empowered knights, to fight against the dragons. And so while we see Oolacile and men discovering magic, we see a fragment of what the pygmies were capable of. And so even though Gwyn at this time is more powerful and has not given away pieces of his soul more than what he gave to Seath as far as we know, we still know that Gwyn has a hatred for the dark. And so he gives the pygmy lords a kingdom. He's more powerful than the pygmies. But as we learn, this gift, the Ringed City, is not what it seems to be. When we as a player character in Dark Souls 3 find the Ringed City, we see it post-glory, but we still see it in beauty. We don't see it as a thriving place. And so, by the time we get there, it's manifest what it actually is. But, initially, it's a great gift. It's a kingdom given by the most powerful being in the universe. As a reward. But secretly, and this is part of Dark Souls 1, we see Gwyn holding up an egg to his daughter, Filia Norm, in the very first church that we enter into. And whether it was further defined at this point or not, this hint of something greater shows that Gwyn was up to something. Because later, as we enter into the Ringed City, we get to know a lot. But during this time period, Gwyn delivers the egg to Filia Norm. And he gives her a dragon as a defender. And whether the egg is the dragon's egg, or whether it's a magical egg that has some connection to power with Filia Norm, the Ringed City, whether anyone realizes it or not, is a prison. And that is the Age of Fire.